in general, financing is a big, both a less understood black hole and also a very complex problem to solve, and hence the solution that emanates has to combine technology with a lot of execution. And I think that is something that a lot of us have taken a stab at, but not really solved it.
First question to you. I know you were an investor with Matrix in the past, then you started OfBusiness. Over the last 10, 15 odd years, how have you seen the B2B landscape evolve?
So I think 5 years back, B2B didn't even exist. Maybe 6 years back, it didn't exist at all. I think when I was an investor, B2B was the most frowned upon space because it was all about low gross margins, high capital intensity, very low tech adoption, and really was considered a capital sink in some ways. So it's changed drastically over the next 5 odd years. I think all of these problems have got addressed in one form or the other. So have seen it really evolve over the last, I would say 5-6 years.
Great to see that the B2B landscape has evolved so much over the last few years. However, if you see in the last 2-3 years, there have been a bunch of B2B companies that have come out. Some have scaled and across multiple verticals. Do you think there are still white spaces out there for founders to go and start a new B2B company?
A lot of them actually. So B2B is a very non-intuitive space, right? So we don't really think about it. So the opportunities are not really here and now for people to really see it. I think people who are in the landscape will really be able to correlate with it. I think there are multiple levels in the B2B chain, starting off with sourcing, which is to tap where the raw materials come from, the mine, mountain, field and sea. Then there is aggregation of raw materials, then there is manufacturing of raw materials, then there is distribution of the same, then there is warehousing of the same, there's logistics around the same, there is financing around the same, there is private labels and creating some brands around the same. So there are various functionalities within B2B that you can touch on one axis. On the other axis, actually you can touch on variety of materials. So almost everything that surrounds you as a human being or as a household or as a professional is almost a B2B supply chain in itself. So there are varieties of raw materials which actually form another axis of growth, and on top of that you have another axis which is a combination of both domestic and export, and hence what happens is that all that you saw in the first two axes pretty much manifold themselves on the third axis. So predominantly we've been centered around a few blocks as you look at this three-dimensional chain, and I think a lot of activity is dependent on what the prevalent incumbents have done. So there's a lot of white space, there's a lot of opportunity to be built out, there's a lot of profit pool to be tapped, there's a lot of problem to be solved, there's a lot of need to be addressed right now.
Any top 3-4 verticals you would suggest founders to spend more time on?
I think in general, financing is a big, both a less understood black hole and also a very complex problem to solve, and hence the solution that emanates has to combine technology with a lot of execution. And I think that is something that a lot of us have taken a stab at, but not really solved it. So that would be one. In my opinion, the second one would be a lot more to do with the raw material space. I think raw materials in general there are lots of them, right? There is food, there is metals, there is plastics, there is paper, there is industrial chemicals. I think a lot of the raw materials today are untouched across all the value chains and functionalities that we spoke about. So that would be the second. Just choose out a new raw material, choose out a new value chain, or choose out financing to just learn the market structure a lot better.
What is your advice for companies that are trying to scale in their 10 to infinity journey? We've spoken a lot about 0 to 1, 1 to 10, but say a $100 million GMV company aspiring to build a $10 billion GMV book. What would you advise them?
So different from different stages. I'm not so sure about the numbers, so let's just divide it into 3 phases. I think the 0 to 10 is very easily understood, so let's take 3 phases after that. Maybe the first one is somewhere in the 10 to multiples of 100. I think the first thing that needs to be done there, because 0 to 10 is all about product market fit, 10 to 100 is a lot about building a successful commercial product market fit. So a commercial product market fit is what 10 to 100 will be. It has to demonstrate capital efficiency, it has to demonstrate profitability, it has to demonstrate that you can scale profitably within that particular horizon. I think 100 to a billion, reaching somewhere in the billions, is likely to be centered a lot around whether you can take what you've built in your first dominated area and actually replicate it in other modules. So if you've done it in one geography, doing it in another geography, if you've done it in one supply chain, actually taking a whole different new supply chain and actually proving yourself again is something that I think will result in a multi-billion space. The next phase, none of us have actually seen it out yet. But the next phase is likely going to be about global dominance, which is to say that you probably done it well in your local markets, whatever your business model is, but then to replicate it in across the border, across global markets where the tastes would be different, where the market structures are different, but what solution you provide is actually transcending all those kind of barriers is what I think multi-billions will entail.
What does digitizing Make in India mean for you?
Well, digitizing Make in India, I think a decade back would have meant an oxymoron for me. Today, I think it means the coming together of the new world with the old world. It means the coming together of strategy with execution. It means the coming together of capital with execution and stuff like that. It means, I think, the best of both worlds coming together.